You're listening to the Infinite Banking Mastery Podcast. Did you know that you could build a tax-free pool of wealth that's liquid and accessible all your life while building your retirement nest egg? Gain full control of your financial future and stop relying on the government and banks. The wealthy have already discovered this wealth-building secret. Now it's your turn to get financially secure without following the conventional wisdom that keeps you in debt to banks. Now here's your host, Valerie LaRocque.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Infinite Banking Mastery Podcast. Wow, can't believe we're into February already. It is just crazy how the weeks fly by. Next week, I will be with my practitioner family from the Nash Institute in Alabama for the annual think tank. And I was actually in a Nelson Nash meeting just recently and thought I would share some of the insight from that meeting. We get together for regular meetings to chat and share insight with one another. And this last one was great. I thought I would just share some of that with all of you. We were reminded, first of all, to think long range. We were reminded that Nelson Nash always had that top of mind as he was a forester. So he naturally thought long range, more than 1-2 generations ahead. And if you think about infinite banking and whole life insurance and building these policies and pools of cash that you can use, that's exactly what we're doing, because we're building as much as we can into the policies that we have to use while we're alive. But then, of course, eventually we will pass away. That will leave a sizable death benefit. And then that next generation can use that cash, build more policies, and just keep creating larger and larger pools of cash as each generation passes away because of the death benefits. So that will be creating this large banking system to help keep the future generations from having to go to the banking system for loans. And they can use their own banking system for mortgages and buying cars and other things that they want to use the money for, investments. So we're creating, if we think long range, we're creating future pools of cash. And the bigger our banking system is, the more we're going to create that for the next generation, and then the more that they can do for the next generation. That's one thing we were reminded to think of from this month's host, or the host from this last meeting, James Nethery. And also, we should think about this. Think about how most people's thoughts and understanding of life insurance is based on someone else's misunderstanding or misconception. Have you ever thought of that? This is so true. Being in the insurance industry for over 20 years now, it is definitely not the industry to get into if you can't handle opposition. It's a difficult industry where nobody wants to talk about dying. They don't think it's going to happen to them or something. They don't want to talk about it. And so it's a difficult industry to get started in. There's always something out there that confuses people, gives them the wrong understanding of life insurance or certain products, or agents that don't do their best to meet their clients' goals or use the wrong type of life insurance product for their client's goal. And then this is how misconceptions get created and get out there. I applaud those of you who are listening to this podcast and doing other types of learning and doing what it takes to learn the truth, which is just really terrific. I would say most, or at least many out there, shoot down any thoughts or discussion that life insurance is anything other than death insurance. But no, that's why it's called life insurance, because it's usable and valuable during your own lifetime, not just after you die for someone else. When thinking long range, we can reflect on the words of Nelson Nash. This you can look into your book, Becoming Your Own Banker, on page 27, review part 1, number 6. And what it says is, it is going to take time and discipline for several years. Don't expect to get rich overnight, but the rewards later on are worth the effort. I think this passage is really great at reminding us that policies get better with age. Funding them, it's going to grow them, it's going to add more cash value that you can use, that will grow, that will compound. And it's not just about how much can I get in right now and access right now? I mean, absolutely. People have goals. You have things you want to do right now and you want to get the money in because you just learned of this concept and you realize, man, I should run the money through a policy first, but I need this chunk of money for something I want to do. And we understand that sometimes the goal is for something right now. We really got to plan for now. But even within that, you need to be thinking long range. Like, this is not just something I want to fund for a moment, fund really high for a year or two, and then back way, way down. But you'd actually rather, it's actually more important for you to continue funding at the highest level that you're able for as long as possible. And like Nelson says, the rewards later on are worth the effort. Now, if we move on to page 40, review part 2, under number 2, Nelson says, for banking purposes, you want the highest cost life insurance that is possible, but avoid it becoming a modified endowment contract. Minimize the death benefit and maximizing the cash value. Now, he's either referring to simply whole life in this case, because you can't do this with a term policy, and universal life is basically term with a savings account attached. But whole life, it tends to be the more expensive type of insurance because it's guaranteed to pay at the end of your life, no matter what age that is, to age 121 for most companies. Maybe some companies go to age 100, but it's guaranteed to pay. And so it tends to be a little bit more expensive, but that's why you can count on it because it has those guarantees in place. It's also guaranteed to grow, and that's important to the policy. You want a policy that is guaranteed death benefit when you pass away, guaranteed cash value growth, and guaranteed cost, because once you acquire that policy, the cost is already factored in for your lifetime, unlike a universal life-based contract, which will have increasing costs throughout your life, adding risk to possibly lapsing your policy in your lifetime, and then you owe tax on all of the gain within your policy. We don't want that. So Nelson is either referring to that, or he could be referring to a higher base to keep the policy from becoming a mech and not using any term riders. Because adding a term rider to your policy is one way to decrease the base premium. And remember that the base premium is exactly the cost of the death benefit that you're starting with. The base is supporting the cost of the death benefit. And so it is the cost. And so if you're lowering that base because you're adding a term rider, then you're lowering the cost. And Nelson Nash said you're going to want a higher cost policy for the infinite banking purpose. And he didn't actually say higher. He said the highest cost. You want the highest cost life insurance. Now, if you go to page 87, the glossary of terms under the capitalization period, there's a quote there: building your personal banking system through the medium of dividend-paying whole life insurance will take as little as 1.5 years. But you still need to continue the capitalization phase for as much as 10 or more years. The longer the period, the more strength of your system. What he's saying here is that, yes, it's possible to capitalize your banking system in a short time period, as little as 1.5 years. He's referring to funding the paid-up additions premium of the contract, but your system will be stronger if you capitalize for a longer time period. Oftentimes, when people don't fully understand, they come to me with the hope that they don't need to fund too high or for too long. They want to get the cash into the policy quickly so that they can use it for whatever purpose they have quickly, such as paying off debts or getting into an investment. But those who don't want to continue funding or who don't want to continue premiums as long as they can are missing out on growth and strength of the policy. And sometimes people want to discontinue all premiums as soon as they can. But again, what did Nelson say? The longer the capitalization period, the more strength of your system. Does that mean your policy will mech if you fund it for a shorter period? No, not necessarily. It's just stronger if you continue premiums, and you will be building your cash value for your future and creating a larger pool from which to finance your future needs. Having the ability to fund your paid-up additions longer usually means you have a higher base premium, and a higher base premium equals a stronger policy, keeping it from becoming a modified endowment contract. One thing that Nelson didn't speak of in the whole book was term riders, adding a term rider to your policy. He was building sturdy policies with as much paid up additions as he could for people without having to add a term rider to the policy. For different people, different ages, male, female, different health ratings, each policy would look different and the base premium would be higher or lower based on these different things. And from there, Nelson would add as much in paid up additions as he could. So the base premium would be what it is based on those different characteristics, your health, your age, whether you're male or female, those different things. And so the base premium is whatever it is because of that, your health rating from the underwriter. And then from there, he would tack on as much paid up additions as was possible per that rating. Having the higher base premium was more protective to the policy than adding the term rider. So adding the term rider, as I've mentioned before, allows for more paid up additions to be funded into the contract and for a lower base premium. It's just that depending on the size of the term rider, it can bring more risk to the policy than if it did not have a term rider at all. However, for the majority of the people that I talk to, the plans and goals that you have, a term rider oftentimes is necessary to address the goals you have with your policy right now that you want to get done soon. It's just that it doesn't make your policy more stable. Of course, each person and situation is unique, and so policies are built as sturdy as possible with your goals in mind. I just wanted to share Nelson's perspective on this and how you can have a policy that's for sure protected from a MEC. You may be a person who's feeling ready to get started with the infinite banking concept, and if so, and you would like to partner with me, feel free to reach out. Although I know there's so much noise going on in the world, so many different choices, so many different directions. We are being pulled every day. Well, what about Bitcoin? What about ETFs, real estate investing, precious metals? You may not be sure if you're ready to begin or if you should be doing something else with your dollars. I hear it all the time. But at the end of the day, the problem that every one of us has is a lack of capital. No exceptions. Capital is the problem. It's the problem for everyone. Not having access to enough capital that we own and control. You might be thinking, well, what's enough? Because enough would be different for everybody, of course. But just think, having access to more capital would allow you to do more, would allow you to help more people, to jump on a business opportunity or an investment opportunity when you come across one. The future is unknown. You don't know what you are going to need or desire additional capital for. But whatever opportunities you might come across, they are going to take capital. And the bottom line is you don't control enough of it. And this is where the infinite banking concept shines. You might be trying to decide what you should be doing with your resources. And should you start a whole life policy? Or should you buy precious metals instead? Or Bitcoin or something else? Well, you should be growing your access to capital that you control. That's for sure. And then you can have a policy started, rocking and rolling for you, and then pay off your debt or invest in something that you believe strongly in. You can have your cash value growing for you and access to a growing pool of money that you can take advantage of other opportunities with. Nelson Nash always said that everyone should be in two businesses, the one in which you make your living and the banking business that finances whatever you do for a living. And of the two, the banking function is the most important because every business and every household depends on financing, and you finance everything you buy. You either pay interest to someone else or you give up interest that you could have earned. You are putting in motion the compounding of your dollars. This point that I'm going over now that I'm making and what really spoke to me as something I needed to share from the last Nelson Nash Institute meeting that I was in with fellow practitioners. The fact that more than anything, the thing you need the most is access to a large pool of capital, as large as you can make it, that you control. Not the next tip on the next hottest stock or when I should buy gold or sell gold based on how it's fluctuating and increasing and when do I get in and when do I get out. What you need most is access to a large pool of capital that you control. That, to me, was so powerful. That is a very powerful thought because that is the most important thing. From there, you can do whatever you want. And by using a whole life policy to house this pool of capital, you are putting in motion the compounding of your dollars for the rest of your life. so that not only do the dollars you fund into the contract become available for a future funding need, but those dollars are working for you, compounding and growing that pool of capital that you ultimately need to be as large as possible. And meanwhile, that you can control for whatever need or investment desire comes your way. Whew, I love it. And I hope that spoke to you as well. Ultimately, what we need is the largest pool of capital possible that we can control. We can control loan repayments, when we pay it back, and all of that. We can control everything about it. And that is what the infinite banking concept can allow you to do. So powerful. As always, if you would like to partner with me, if you would like my help to help you take over the banking function of your life using whole life insurance and the infinite banking concept, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach me at Valerie@alphaomegawealth.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing my podcast with someone you feel could use this information. And keep in mind, you can follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Facebook. On Instagram and Facebook, you can just search my name and Infinite Banking Mastery, and you'll find me that way. Thank you so much again, and have a great week.